Hello friends, so hopefully you can't hear the wind too bad while I'm out here. I'll try to keep this clip relatively short, but I thought I would introduce you to my first Victober vlog. It is the 4th of October, so we're a few days into the month. I also did start my Victober reading a week early, so I've been reading Victorian literature for about a week and a half, and I have quite a bit to talk about. So first of all, I did start with A Lady of Quality by Frances Hodgson Burnett, and I ended up giving that about 2.5, 3 stars. I think on Goodreads I did 3 stars, and on Storygraph I did 2.5. So clearly I was kind of disappointed in it. It's a book that's set in 1690, and we follow a young girl basically from her birth to her death. So it's a lot of time that's covered, but it's only 250 pages. But we start off with her being born into a pretty unfortunate situation. Her mother passes away not long after she is born. The main character, Clorinda, is born, obviously not the mother herself anyway. And her father has completely just turned away from his wife at that point. He does not treat her with very much respect or care. And he has 2 other daughters besides Clorinda, the main character, and he really doesn't care about any of them. In fact, he doesn't even want to see them. He has the servants keep them in a different part of the house. They're not allowed to cross paths at all. But one day, Clorinda, who has grown up, I think she's 6 by the time that her father actually really meets her, and at that point she's been taught a lot of inappropriate behavior by the stable boys, and she's also learned how to ride and has really enjoyed riding horses. So she's kind of become a little bit of a piece of work as a child in a lot of ways. She in fact is actually described in a lot of very masculine terms. However, she is described as very beautiful, but even then it's kind of in a more masculine way. In fact, she's kind of portrayed as being almost larger than life, like beyond the scope of reality in a lot of ways. She's like inhumanly strong at some points, and she's just very entrancing for people. Like everybody's drawn to her, everybody's very attracted to her and loves her. As she gets older, she becomes known for riding horses, for being very intense in her personality and being very outspoken. She also dresses like a man a lot of the time. She'll wear riding props and stuff that her father has purchased for her, as well as some lovely dresses that he's purchased for her. So she's very much a wild thing. But one day she decides, you know what, I'm going to be a good lady, a lady of quality, as the title suggests. And I'm going to win, you know, a wealthy husband and prove that I can be ladylike. So that's what she does. She gives up all of the wearing pants things. She tries to calm herself down a little bit. And things basically just continue on from there. It's a very interesting story. I will say I did like a lot of the character arc for the main character. I found it very interesting to see what things impact her personality as she gets older, what things impact the way she views the world and other people. But I think my biggest gripe is this just wasn't long enough. Like, we weren't able to get as in depth with her arc as I would have liked to. Like, we were able to see it. And the second half it's done, the transitions come a little bit better as far as her personality, the transitions in her personality. But the first half of the book, I feel like things just kind of happened a little bit fast. Well, it was really drawn out in the beginning, and then there was kind of this weird shift in her personality that was just, it just kind of happened, and I didn't really get to see it. And then the second half, more transitions happened, but we're able to see the development a little bit. So it was just a little bit weirdly plotted as far as that arc went. I also felt like all of the side characters were pretty flat, like they weren't developed in any way. In fact, there's one side character, one of the sisters of Clorinda, who I felt like could have had a very interesting story arc, but she just didn't. Like, she just ended up kind of being the same throughout the whole story. She didn't really change all that much, even though she's of course aging as well. There was also just 1 or 2 things that happened that were a little bit strange, just scenes and things that I thought were a little bit odd. So yes, there was a lot of potential there, I guess, but it just wasn't fully developed the way I would have liked it to be. Basically, this is one that if you're interested in Frances Hodgson Burnett, I wouldn't turn you away from it, but don't go into it expecting necessarily for it to be a favorite. It's one of the lowest rated books on my Goodreads TBR, or it was, so I kind of figured it might not be all that great, but yeah, it it was just an interesting book. Like I said, there were things I did enjoy about it, and I enjoyed the overall what the story was doing. It just didn't do it enough for me. So anyway, I will also say there's a lot, especially in the second half towards the end, there's a lot of religious discussion. So if that's not really your thing, maybe avoid this one. But like I said, I did enjoy it. I really found her arc very interesting. Like I said, there's some very interesting events that occur that impact her life, and yeah, it was an interesting one. So then I have also been working on Bleak House by Charles Dickens, which I've been really loving. I've loved the narrative style. I wasn't sure how I would feel about it when I had heard about it. Basically, it switches. Some chapters are in third person, kind of omniscient, while others are in first person from one of the characters' points of view. Esther Summerson specifically, who I really, really love, by the way, but yeah, it just works really well. Like, the tone of each of those different points of view is very different. Like, Esther's chapters are kind of lighthearted. There's a lot of kind of whimsical things happening. I mean, there's some real emotion, of course, involved in certain things that are going on. But overall, the characters involved in her story are pretty goofy and over the top and just very interesting. She's a very sweet and good person. Sorry, my hand was getting tired, so I had to figure out a different way to hold the camera. Anyway, the third person chapters are a little bit more eerie and mysterious, and there's a lot of discussion of darkness and fog, and it's just very interesting to go back and forth, but it flows very nicely, and so I've really enjoyed that aspect. One complaint I do have is that in Esther's chapters, she keeps mentioning a young surgeon that she clearly is interested in, but she won't give any details. Like, she doesn't want to talk about it, which I love that for character development. But I'm just sitting there like, Esther, I just want to know about your romance so much. So I hope that starts to develop a little bit more and we get a little more information about that. But anyway, yeah, it's really good. I'm very, very happy that I'm enjoying this so much. I also started Mayor of Casterbridge on audiobook. That's going really well. Not much to say about it right now. It does start very quickly, which I love about it. I really like the narrator I've been listening to. I can't remember his name, but the way he's narrating is just really bringing the story to life for me in a really great way, so I've just adored that. And then I also have started Mary Barton by Elizabeth Gaskell. Started meaning I'm not even through the first chapter, so not far at all, but I am liking it. I am glad to be back in Elizabeth Gaskell's writing style, and we'll see how I'll get on with it as I get deeper into the story. So that is everything for this first clip, everything I'm reading, everything I've read. Of course, I'll keep you updated. I think I'm going to end up doing 2 vlogs for this month, so be looking forward to the next one, I guess, after this. But yeah, I think I'll just wait to update you until I'm a little bit deeper into Mary Barton, and maybe in the meantime I'll get some more B-roll footage of just fall festivities and you can just enjoy that. Hey guys, so I was just about to go to bed, but I just have a lot of thoughts about what I've been reading and I just need to share them with you really quick. It is the evening of the 7th of October and I have not gotten very far in Mary Barton. I will say that right now. Unfortunately, I've found, especially during the week when I'm working, I've only been able to get through my pages of Bleak House and then I end up wanting to take a break, and then by the time I'm done and feel ready to read again, it ends up being about bedtime. So it's been a little tricky. I'm hoping to read more this weekend of Mary Barton. But before I discuss more in depth my thoughts on that one, what little I've read, I did want to discuss Bleak House a little bit. So of course I'm keeping this spoiler free, but I am about 300, almost 300 pages into it. I think I'm like 260, I guess, pages into it. So maybe not almost 300, but pretty close. And I'm really, really enjoying it. I will say the portion I read today, unfortunately, was a little bit of a drag for me. I really struggled to focus. I ended up having to spark notes a summary of the chapters I read because I did not want to reread them, but I was a little confused about what was going on. I feel like we were introduced to a couple new characters in a way that made me question whether I was supposed to know them already. So I spark noted it, and even in the spark notes summary, it didn't really make it clear if they had been in the book earlier, and I just forgot about it. So then I looked up a character list to try to get some information about some of these characters, which is always dangerous to do, especially with classics, because usually it will spoil things for you. And in this case, I'm really be sad to say that it did. I mean, it's not going to ruin the book for me. I think it's a good enough book already that just knowing this one bit of information isn't going to ruin anything for me. In fact, it makes me more intrigued to see how we end up there. Basically, to keep it spoiler free, I will say it in the vaguest terms possible, but if you read this, you'll know what I'm talking about. Most likely, because it's a pretty big event. Basically, I found out about something that happens to Mr. Tulkinghorn, which, like I said, I was really sad when I saw it. It was one of those moments where you, like, feel yourself going in slow motion, like, no, I didn't want to know that. But I am very intrigued to see how that all comes about. I already have a theory about who possibly would have been involved in what happened, because obviously I just saw like a single aspect of the event. I didn't learn much about it beyond that. So it does have me curious to see how we get there and how soon we get there, since I am not quite halfway through, but I'm approaching the halfway point. Within the next week or so I should reach the halfway point. So yes, that was a dramatic moment in my day today, but like I said, I am enjoying this. The portion I just read was one of the third person perspective chapters, or it's a few chapters that are in the third person perspective, and I just miss Esther. Like, I just want to be back in Esther's head. She's just so fun to read about, and I love all the people she's meeting and the experiences she's having, and that's like the part of this book that's really has me most intrigued. There are some things within the third person perspective that I've liked, but the couple chapters I read, like I said, have kind of focused in on characters that I'm just not as interested in, or I just don't know anything about after 260 pages, and so I'm reading it like, who are you? I'm really confused. Particularly as at this point I've fallen in love with a lot of the characters, so introducing new characters is just kind of throwing off my groove a little bit. But I think once I finish the chapter I'm currently in the middle of, it will go back into Esther's point of view, so that will be good. As for The Mayor of Casterbridge by Thomas Hardy, this is the other one I have a little bit more to say about. I am over halfway through at this point through the audiobook. At the end of each day, I actually go through and look at the pictures involved in the portion that I had listened to that day, and that's been just kind of a nice experience as I've been listening through. I must say, definitely this book is intriguing me a lot more than it did the first time. The first time, this one really didn't totally grip me. I mean, it did, but it ended up being, at least at the time, it became my least favorite Hardy that I had read. Not that I had read that many at that point, but I just ended up being disappointed by it and not really liking it. But this time around, I'm enjoying it, like I said, a lot more. There's also a lot of things going on that I had totally forgotten about, and some details regarding things I did remember that just add a little bit more dimension to it. Michael Henchard is such a fascinating character. I just feel like his flaws are such an interesting thing to analyze and discuss. Like, I just feel like he has very similar flaws 20 years later that he did at the beginning of the book, where he made this huge mistake having to do with his family, and he's trying to overcome his past. He's trying to move on, but he still is struggling with a lot of those flaws and temptations and tendencies to lose his temper, to be very impulsive. And as I've been pondering that and thinking about, what Thomas Hardy is trying to say about this character and what can be said about this character and where he ends up by the end of this book versus where he started, as well as where he ends up in the middle, there's so many different discussions that can be had about it. Discussions about, is it really the alcohol that made him do what he did, or was it something just in his temperament? Additionally, there's a sense in a lot of Hardy novels of society keeping people from being able to change and become better and break away from their past, and so they're just stuck in it. But how much is society or other people at fault, and how much is it the individual themselves? Henchard in particular, I think, has a tendency in this book to blame everything and everyone but himself. He blames the alcohol, he blames society, he blames a fortune teller that told him the incorrect weather forecast, he blames the weather itself, he blames his wife for not telling him certain things or doing certain things, he blames everybody else, but he never really takes responsibility for his actions. Like, he shows regret a lot of the time for them, but he never actually takes responsibility for them. He never actively really tries to make it right, and if he does, it's usually for his own pride's sake as opposed to actually caring about another person. And it's a lot of those tendencies that end up being his downfall. I'll be interested to see how I continue to ponder on some of those themes and ideas in this book as I continue on. We're kind of reaching, in a lot of ways, the beginning of the end for him as far as his fortunes starting to decrease, degrade. People are learning about his secrets. He's not as respected as he once was. He's losing a lot of his money and power, and a lot of it, again, comes back to a lot of his own faults and his own choices as opposed to everybody else, even though he still has that tendency to blame it on others. Anyway, I feel like at this point I'm just being a little bit redundant. So that's how I'm feeling about this so far, and I'm excited to get through the rest of it. Probably going to finish it by the end of this next week, I would guess. And then I'll probably end up listening to The Picture of Dorian Gray, which will be really exciting. Then, like I said, I did want to mention a little bit of my feelings of Mary Barton. I am only 40 pages in, so like I said, I have not made it very far, but I really want to. Like, I keep thinking about this book and how I really want to get back into reading it, so I am enjoying it. It's not for lack of enjoyment. It's just a struggle to find time and energy to focus on it because I am reading about 24 pages in Bleak House every day, and I am, of course, working, and I'm living with my family now, and they're just very distracting sometimes, not in a bad way, but like, they're doing things, they want to talk. I often will just sit with my AirPods in my ear and listen to music, like instrumental music, while I read, which helps me kind of block things out, but often I still struggle a little bit, especially in the beginning of reading, to focus. And because Bleak House is dragging a little bit for me, at least the past couple days it has, it makes it so once I'm done, first of all, it takes me even longer to get through those 24 pages than it sometimes does. And then when I finish, I'm like tired and I want to take a break from reading, but it's just really hard sometimes to know exactly how long that break should be. And sometimes after I've done some other things, I'm just not really motivated to read anymore. And so yeah, it's just been a little tricky with that. But like I said, I hope this weekend I can read a little bit more of this. I've set it up so Bleak House I don't read on Sundays, and that's largely because I try to prioritize more reading and studying of more religious texts as opposed to just kind of everyday fiction and things. But especially with classics, I'm not as concerned with avoiding Sundays to read them because I feel like there's a lot of religious discussion in Victorian literature especially, and Victorian literature is less likely to include, swear words, sex scenes, those things that I particularly would rather not read on a Sunday just for my own lifestyle and stuff. But anyway, I would be willing to read Mary Barton. I say that because Saturday, tomorrow, I'll probably have a chance to read some of this, but it's going to be an interesting day because I have to get up early, which is why I'm like, I need to finish this clip so I can go to bed. But anyway, I have to get up early for a work meeting. That is the only thing I have to do work-wise, though. I'm not working a full shift. I'm just, doing about an hour-long meeting early in the morning that will go from 8 to 9, and then I will have several hours after that I'll probably fit in. Definitely my Bleak House reading, probably Mary Barton as well. I'm going to try to during that time, and then my mom and sister and I are going to a showing of The Lion King on stage, and that will be at 2 in the afternoon, so it's a matinee. And then afterwards, we will be going to dinner because it's like a 45-minute drive to the place where it is being performed. So it's a bit of a drive, and yeah, it will be about dinner time by the time it's over, at least for time for an early dinner, and my aunt and cousins are also going to be going with us. So we'll all have dinner together, which will be really fun, but of course that will take time, and then I don't know what time we're gonna get back. And then I think tomorrow night, if I can get my sister to agree, we're probably going to rent and watch I think it was 2011 Jane Eyre, the film, which I've seen once, but it was a long time ago. It's been a really long time since I watched that adaptation, and my sister's never seen it, so I really would love to watch that with her. Plus, I just think I need some other Victorian goodness besides reading. As much as I love the reading, I want a little bit of some film adaptation watching too. So anyway, we'll do that, and then tomorrow night there's a strong chance I'll have some time to read, particularly as Sunday I don't have anything anywhere I need to be until like 2 o'clock. So that will be my sleep-in day for this week, because I haven't really I guess my last sleep-in day was Monday, but even that day I had to be in by 11:30, and I wanted to edit and upload a video before that, the one that went out on this last Tuesday, which I believe was my wrap-up for September, if I remember correctly, which took me a while because I was messing up a lot in that video, and it ended up being kind of on the long side. The raw footage, obviously when I cut it down, it was a little closer to a more normal length for my wrap-ups, but anyway, that's besides the point. So yes, that's where I'm at. This clip is already almost 20 minutes, so we're going to stop there. I'm going to probably get to bed. I kind of want to read Mary Barton, and I feel kind of energized to do that, but like I said, I am getting up early again tomorrow, and I don't want to wreck myself, especially because after the meeting I want to be able to use those hours between getting home from my meeting and going to the play to do reading. That for sure I'd like to focus on. Definitely get my reading for Bleak House done, obviously, and then hopefully get some Mary Barton reading in. Anyway, again, I need to just stop this clip, so I will update you when I have more thoughts to share. So I just wanted to show off this new t-shirt that I got. Sorry if you hear any snoring, my brother's in the next room and he's not quiet. So anyway, I got this shirt from Pixie Hollow's Etsy shop the other day. She's the one who made all of the popular Victober shirts, which I of course have as well, but this one has a whole bunch of Victorian authors that is just great. I really love it. It has Bronte, Dickens, Eliot, Collins, Gaskell, Hardy, and Trollope, and I just absolutely love it. And I really love this color. I wasn't sure if I picked the color that I wanted, because in the pictures I couldn't quite tell what the color was, so I just did my best guess, and it was the one that I wanted. So it's perfect. I love it. I'll try to remember to link her shop down below if you're interested in some of these products, but yeah, she does a great job. And if she happens to be watching this, I don't know if she is, but if she is happening to watch this, thank you. This is beautiful. guys, so I hope you've enjoyed my montages of all of the fun Halloween/autumnal activities I've been able to do. So we went to Cornbelly's, which is like a local autumnal fair. They also have some like spooky stuff there that I don't usually participate in because it's just not really my vibe. But we go every year as a family. We've been going for almost 20 years now, since pretty much we first moved here. And it's always just a joy. So we did that, and then I had some footage of the decorations that my lovely friend Shiley put up. She's one of my roommates from college, and there's 4 of us who were roommates who are still pretty close friends. We hang out, do things a few times a year at least. And 3 out of the 4 of us were able to get together for a Halloween party, and fortunately the 4th one wasn't able to be there. She's actually attending law school in another state, so she's very busy right now, but we were able to do the Halloween party, at least the 3 of us. And yeah, it was just a lot of fun. Shiley does an incredible job, and of course it was just a lot of fun. We saw Hocus Pocus 2 together for the first time, and I actually did enjoy it. I understand on some level people's complaints with it, but I'm like, what did you expect? I didn't expect it to be like a great movie. I expected it to make me laugh and be a fun little fan servicey type movie, and that's what it was. So yes, we really enjoyed that. We did some pumpkin carving, watched a few other movies while we were pumpkin carving, and then just doing other things. Luckily, Shiley gets off on planning things like that and just loves to do it. Like, she was already talking about planning stuff for our Christmas party in a couple months. So yeah, she's great at that. It's always so much fun, and I'm excited for our Christmas party, which the 4th girl, Rebecca, will be able to attend at that point, which will be really great. Anyway, I did want to come on here briefly to discuss my reading, because I've been doing a lot of reading the past few days. I can't remember if I actually told you that I finished The Mayor of Casterbridge. If I didn't, then I will say it now, and if I did, I'll just cut this part out. But yes, I did finish The Mayor of Casterbridge. It was great. I really liked it a lot better this time than I did the first time I read it. I think I was just at a better point in my reading life to enjoy it this time around. It's not necessarily a favorite Hardy still, but I do think if I were to do my ranking again, that one would move up a little bit. It's definitely a very tragic story, but unlike some of Hardy's other works, I feel like a lot of the tragedy occurs because of the character's own decisions and flaws, whereas a lot of his other tragedies, yes, a lot of the fallout comes due to flaws in the individual characters, but in a lot of them, there is a sense that society or people around them kind of influence that tragedy in coming about. However, Mayor of Casterbridge, it's very much Henchard himself that really causes his own downfall, because he has such a temper, because he is so stubborn, because he can be very selfish in a lot of ways. And you see that from the very beginning when he makes this terrible mistake. Many of you probably already know what that is, even if you haven't read this book, but if you don't know, I want to avoid the spoilers, because I think it's just fun to go into this one really not knowing anything about it, because the action kicks off right in chapter 1. So anyway, he makes this big mistake in chapter 1. 20 years pass, and he has grown a lot and become a much better person on the surface. But underneath all of that, he still has a lot of the same flaws. He hasn't actually overcome his own issues, at least not in a way that's permanent. Everything he's done, he thinks he's repented for the past, but all he's done is stopped drinking out of fear as opposed to genuinely wanting to change. And as soon as he gets the opportunity, he goes right back into those flaws, which I think it's just a really interesting look at human nature and character. I also really like, I can't even remember her name, Lucetta. I really like Lucetta as a character because she's kind of in this role, without spoilers of course, where she is kind of in a position of being the woman that's getting in the way of the romance you want to happen. And yet you don't really blame her. Like, she's a genuinely good person overall. She just has made mistakes in her past. And similar to Tess from Tess of the D'Urbervilles, she's not allowed to move past those by society and by other people. And so in a lot of ways, you're upset with her because you really want Elizabeth to have her happiness, but you also can't really blame Lucetta because she's just trying to live her life and try to find her own happiness while also dealing with the society she's been born into. Anyway, so it's very interesting. I like her character. I love Elizabeth Jane as well. She reminds me a lot, I want to say her name's Maddie or Marty in The Woodlanders. They have a similar storyline to each other. However, of course, The Woodlanders, Maddie or Marty, I can't remember her name. Anyway, Maddie or Marty, she does not end up in as good a place as Elizabeth Jane does by the end, unfortunately, but they do have a very similar storyline. Although in Elizabeth Jane's case, it is extra interesting as far as she starts off being so central to a lot of what's going on, a lot of the drama, and then she just kind of fades into the background a little bit, but in a way that's part of the story. Like, it's not just the author forgetting to discuss her. It's the author reflecting Henchard and his priorities and his focus. So anyway, it was a great book. I'm glad I reread it. Mostly though, what I wanted to get on here to discuss with you is, first of all, Mary Barton. I have just over 100 pages left. I'm hoping to finish this today. I have actually moved to the audiobook a little bit more with this. I have done some physical reading with it, but I just found that I wasn't getting enough time to read this, and with finishing The Mayor of Casterbridge, I had an audiobook opportunity open up, and because I wasn't getting through this as fast as I wanted to, I really want to get to Dracula by the end of the month, and I would like to start Lady Anna by Anthony Trollope if possible, and I just was taking too long to read this, so I decided to use the audiobook to kind of speed up the process a little bit, especially because the last week with all those activities going on, I knew I wasn't going to have as much time to read, and that time would mostly be spent reading Bleak House, which I'll get to in a moment. So yes, I've been listening to the audiobook while driving to and from work the past couple days, and while at work, while I'm doing some tasks and stuff that allow me to listen to things, music, or audiobooks. So yes, I've made it a good chunk of the way through, and I have been so stressed. I hit, of course, that midway point that I knew was going to happen. I've heard the direction of this book really shifts in the middle, and that a mystery kind of comes up in the middle, and I had guesses about what that mystery would be, and I was not wrong. But the stressful part is, not only, of course, are they blaming the wrong person for this crime that's been committed, but also there's a good chance that the person who did it is also someone you don't want to have done it. And so I've been just stressed listening to it. I almost just kept going with it, just barely, because I want to see how this ends, but I needed to get my reading for Bleak House done because I'm already 2 days behind and I need to get caught up. So I did start reading Bleak House today. I have 20 pages left of what I wanted to read today, but I just wanted to come on here and say that I just finished chapter 32, which is called The Appointed Time, if you've read it, and hopefully you'll know what chapter I'm talking about. But I just have to say, Dickens is buck wild. Like, it was one of those moments where I was reading it and I was like, I need to look up a summary of this because I think I know what just happened, but I can't believe that actually just happened. So I read a summary of it and I was like, yeah, I was right. That is exactly what happened. I was like, I have to be imagining this. There's no way Dickens actually had that happen to someone, but he did. And Dickens just has a way of winning me over, man. I still love this. I'm really stressed about Esther right now, though, I must say, because there's some unfortunate things happening in her storyline, and her last chapter ended with a sentence that I was like, is this a permanent situation? Is it temporary? If you've read it, maybe you'll know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so there's some things going on there that I need clarification as soon as possible, which I think I'm a chapter or two away from getting that, which is unfortunate. But anyway, it's great. I'm still loving it. Still glad that I decided to read it for this Victober. I'm going to end this clip here because it went already longer than I wanted it to because of that discussion of Mayor of Casterbridge that I realized I don't think I had yet. But I think my next clip will be the last clip in this vlog before I start my part 2 for Victober, and I'm going to try to finish this before I do that, and then I'll let you know my overall thoughts on this. Of course, still spoiler free, but I will discuss that with you. And yeah, like I said, I'll close this out. Hey guys, so welcome back to my room with the not great lighting, but this is where we're going to end this vlog. It is Monday the 17th and I have completed Mary Barton by Elizabeth Gaskell. I actually completed it a couple of days ago, right after I made that last clip, and I did really end up enjoying this. I really liked the way things came together in the end. There were aspects of it that did kind of shock me that Elizabeth Gaskell actually went went certain places with some of the characters. If you haven't read this book is really a big social commentary on the plight of the poor, the factory workers, and their relationships with their employers, the growth of industrialization and new technology that make it more difficult for these poor people to find work. And something I love about Elizabeth Gaskell's approach to this sort of subject, to all of her social commentary, is that she recognizes there's a problem, but she makes sure that everyone in the story, everyone involved, is treated as a human being and seen as a human being and not just the enemy. I think it gets really easy in a lot of ways to see the employers, the factory owners, as the devil themselves, that they're the enemy, they're the ones causing the problems, and it makes sense because they're in charge and they make a lot of the decisions, but I like that she notices that a lot of these things are much more complicated than what we'd like to think them as. However, there are solutions and there are things we can do if we work together as human beings and see each other as human beings, as fellow children before God, as she would likely put it, and as I frankly would see it as well. I do think towards the end of this, if you are not really into kind of more of a preachy feeling with religion and stuff in Victorian novels, this does kind of lean into that a little bit more towards the end. So if that's really not to your taste, just be aware of that. This is definitely the most like that out of all of Gaskell's novels that I've read so far. Again, personally, that doesn't bother me because I am a religious person as well, and so I appreciate a good spiritual messaging as long as it's not overdone or overly sweet, and I don't feel like it was handled that way in this book. I think as of right now, I would probably rank this. I feel the exact same way about this as I did about Ruth, as far as I feel like it was a solid read. I really liked it. I would certainly reread it in the future. It's a solid 4-star read where it's above average, well above average. It's really great. It didn't necessarily have that X factor to bring it over 4 stars where it just like really brought me in, but it was a really, really good book. Another thought I had is I really like on the back of this book, it mentions that this book was almost called John Barton, which is Mary's father. And it would have been so interesting to see how that would have changed this book. I feel like it brought the commentary to the forefront, and I kind of feel like, I don't know why Elizabeth Gaskell would have changed that, but it's possible maybe she just wanted to point out the fallout of a lot of this chaos and struggle. Maybe she wanted to bring hope more to the forefront, and Mary Barton herself definitely represents more of a hopeful feeling, a hopeful tone to this story. Whereas John Barton, I think, would have focused a lot more on the tragedy of the story and would have made it, I don't want to say more tragic because obviously the same things likely would have happened, but I think it would have, just brought the tragedy more to the forefront. And like I said, I feel like Elizabeth Gaskell really believed that there was a way that employers and the employed could work together to solve both of their problems, to compromise, to make sure that everybody's getting fed, everybody's getting taken care of, while also allowing their business to thrive and to succeed, because that's, if the business fails, then nobody has a job. So I think just in her viewpoint, she wanted to show that yes, there's problems. Yes, this is a very tragic situation and we need to deal with it. We can't just sit back and not talk about it. We can't just not do anything about it. But it's also not all hopeless. And so I really like that she ended up calling it Mary Barton, although I do think calling it John Barton would have also added a different flavor to the story that I don't think would have necessarily been bad. Just different, and it's interesting to think about. So anyway, like I said, really enjoyed this. I'm not going to mention what I'm reading next. I'll start that in my next vlog. Bleak House is still going well. I have a day off this week that I don't have any plans, so I'm excited to be able to use that to kind of really get a little deeper into Victober, hopefully, not only in reading, but also in maybe activities, maybe watching things. Maybe I'll even find a recipe that I could try that's kind of Victorian era-esque. Maybe not from the Victorian era, because I know back then cooking was more of an art, so they don't have like specific amounts that you put in, and that just sounds stressful to me. But I could try some sort of something that kind of is inspired by that era. Like I said, we'll see. Anyway, that is it. Let me know how your Victober is going, as I would love to know. Also, let me know what you thought about anything I spoke about in this video, and if you liked the books that I've read, if you don't like them, what your thoughts on them in general are. Again, thank you for watching. Have a wonderful Victober, and I will see you next time. Bye!